All right, so welcome to the Thousand Ant Podcast. I'm Matt Shell, and I'm joined by Kennedy from
Hello.
Cozy.games. Cozy Games. How do you say?
CozyK, yes.
Cozy.games. The at is on the screen, and so for a little bit of context, so Kennedy is a content creator, kind of focused on a certain cozy world of video games, and I encountered your content via TikTok, where you've been pretty active. As the people who follow the Thousand Ant content know, I'm like a little bit obsessed with TikTok right now. I've just kind of turned my attention
Me too.
to it. Yeah, it's got that power, right? You start
Yeah.
with it and you're like, whoa, it's very sticky and appealing. And so yeah, so I found you through there and just loved what you were doing. And then, as I was saying before we started recording, I'm working on a game that is cozy in the cozy universe, my Untitled Cute Space game. And so I just thought I'd love to talk to you as a kind of a representative of the world of cozy games, as a
Yes.
player of cozy games. And then I
Yeah.
thought that talking about this content creation stuff that you're doing would be very interesting as well. So, I mean, maybe we start there.
Okay.
How did you get going making content about video games online?
Yeah, so I think I started with my Instagram, and I don't even think I had a plan. I just like recently got back into video games because of just like stress of school, and it really helped me like relax and de-stress and stuff like that. And so I was like all in again. Like I had been into video games my whole life, but I was in it again now. And I think after that, I was like searching for a community a little bit, and I really wanted to like talk to other people about it because I didn't have any friends in real life that cared about video games. And then there's also like a creative aspect I wanted to kind of loop into that. And so Instagram kind of did all of that for me. I was able to like put together little pictures and also enter this community of like a lot of mainly women and people also like tapping into a creative side of like showing what video game they're playing and how they're playing it that day and stuff like that. So that's how I got started. It was just Instagram, and I didn't know what I was doing, but yeah, I loved it. Like the second I joined the community, everybody was so nice and like supportive and like, yay, there's another person. And it's really cute.
That's awesome. No, and that was
Yeah.
actually something that I really noticed just looking at your TikTok, and then you just 6 days ago, at the time of this recording, launched your YouTube channel, which is going great. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I just really see that community there, right? There is obviously a group of people who really are resonating with this content and really see something for them there, which it's very visible and notable, which I
Yeah.
thought was really interesting. How did you kind of see that start to develop?
Like you mean through Instagram? Like
Or just
did
yeah, how this you mentioned community. Like how did that kind of manifest, or how did you become a part of it to have people start to kind of communicate with you? Like
Yeah, I think it was just really like following all of the people who were making content that like I wanted to engage with and see, and like I was inspired by. And since everybody was so nice and welcoming, like they would automatically follow you back and support you and like everything you're posting and engage with like the comments you were making on your captions and things like that.
yeah,
And so it automatically felt like, oh, these are people who get me, and these are people who like the same games that I do. And yeah, and I think people were always really open to just like talking. Like these are strangers, but like you can just respond to their story, and all of a sudden you're having a conversation about like this game that you both love, and you're both like geeking out about it. And I think that's so rare in real life, and to have this like little community on Instagram is like so special, I think.
yeah, no, that's amazing. It's also, though, there's something that I think that's interesting, which is that I think that there's something about this community and this group of people playing these games, these specific games, because, for example, out in the wider video game world is not always known for being warm and welcoming and kind
Yeah.
and empathetic, right? So
Yeah.
there was a very interesting. I kind of observed. This is a weird anecdote, but I was looking at the game Calico, which just came out, which looks great. The cat cafe game. Very cute aesthetics, and I think definitely in this kind of cute and cozy world. And they shipped on Steam. I think I was looking at the Steam page, and they had a bunch of bugs at launch, right? And as a developer, this is obviously a very stressful thing, right? You ship your game and there's bugs, so you need to fix them as fast as you can, and people are sometimes very upset and sometimes super toxic. What I noticed here was that these people were like, there's bugs, but we love you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I love these people. Yeah. They were like, there's bugs, but it's okay. I know you're working really hard and you're doing great. And I was like, oh my God, I love these people, So I think there's some interesting, the people who play these kind of cozy games and, are a certain type of people, right? Which I think is also interesting. And they're not like the toxic League of Legends players who, are all kind of being mean to each other,
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And not to say like all of those people are toxic, but I think that there is,
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's like the group of people who looked at that group of people and were like, I want something else. I'm going to go over here,
Yes.
And we kind of all found each other. And I think that's great to have.
Totally. No, I totally see that. And it kind of struck me because I noticed how different it was, and I noticed what a warm, nice vibe it was. And I was like, oh, and it's all around. It's, there's this reflection of the kind of the content of the games, and the vibes of the games are all about caring and nurturing and, taking care of, virtual chickens or whatever it is. And, and then here's this group of people who also want to be nice to each other on the internet, right? Which is just a nice thing to see in the year 2021, right?
Yeah.
So you started off on Instagram, and then where did TikTok come into the story?
So I, like you, am obsessed with TikTok. It's, oh my gosh. The algorithm is just on point. Like they just know you. The second you log in, they're like, this is everything you want to see all 24 hours a day. And, you're going to sit here and watch it all. And so I was just on it on my like personal stuff. And I saw some people in the gaming community kind of venturing into TikTok and it going well for them. And I was like, okay, like, how can I translate the kind of cozy aesthetic of what I'm posting to TikTok and also kind of reach that same community of people that just want cozy casual games.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I think it was like in January, early January or something. I just decided to go for it. And my first one was like
only January that you started, because your account is, I mean, when I looked at it, it's something like 35,000 followers. So it's grown really quickly.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was so short. That's crazy. We're recording this now. It's February 12th. Whoa. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I didn't get that part of the story. That's very interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It was definitely shocking because on Instagram, it's like everybody in the community kind of has the same amount of like followers and you're not really there for like, any like following or anything. You're kind of just there for the community and stuff. But yeah, TikTok was like, whoa, okay, now there's like all of these people who, are looking to me for this kind of like cozy space and like this like identity of a gamer. And yes, I kind of all of a sudden felt like, okay, now I'm going to create this content here that's a little bit different than Instagram and that's a little bit more tailored for like advice or like recommendations and like, reaching that audience of people that like isn't in the gaming community on Instagram, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that's, well, there's a bunch of directions we could go from there. But something that you said that just popped out to me is this idea of an identity of a gamer, right? That is maybe not the stereotypical identity of a gamer, right? That of like representing a group of gamers that I would say are underrepresented, and I think that I think we see that there is a group of people who are feeling like, yeah, I don't totally feel maybe welcome in the traditional gaming spaces. I don't feel so embraced by that. But then here you're creating a space for folks that obviously they do feel that. It's not really a question. It's just it's an observation.
Yeah. Definitely. And like, I think there's some stat or something that's like women are actually like one of the higher, what's it called? Like demographics of gamers, but it's like mostly mobile games.
Yes.
And that's so interesting to me because it's like the identity of gamer, like that society sees is like this boy who plays like pew pew shooty games, and that's it, like competitive like shooty games. And it's just so interesting that there's this like whole group of gamers that like are not kind of being included in that or like even marketed towards. Like I feel like there's like huge opportunities
just being for kind of supported, right? Like
and and like I think like that's what's like motivating me so much right now in my TikTok is like I want to be able to connect with all those people that are like not identifying themselves as gamers. They're like, no, I just play like Candy Crush. And it's like, no, you're a gamer and you would probably love all of these other games and like all of these other things. And you just haven't like felt welcomed into the community. And yeah, that's my goal, I guess.
No, I think that's a really, really interesting point. And I think also, especially this year with everything going on, we're all inside, we're all on screens now, so heavy. And who isn't interacting with some form of, either games or game-like content, or, it's the idea that, and especially if I'm 41, I've now grown up in an era where video games were just, and especially increasingly, just such a normal part of culture. So the idea that there would be this whole group of people who are kind of not really represented in that culture, just definitely feels like a missed opportunity to me. And so you just started posting on TikTok in January and got 35,000 followers. What happened?
I know. I don't know. I think my first post was like, it was kind of like tapping into that, like, do you feel like you don't normally connect with the typical gamer vibe? And if so, like, get cozy with me. Let's play some games. And I think a lot of people resonated with that. Luckily, and
you touched the third rail. It was like zap. There, you found something there. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, I think it's also interesting, not to get into a long kind of TikTok nerd time, but like I think TikTok is also interesting in the regard that it's in a moment right now where it's giving, because I think I looked at your Instagram account and you had 5,000 followers, something like that, right? It was not a case of you moved a huge you moved a huge Instagram group over to TikTok, right? This was a native group that arose on TikTok. And I think TikTok is in that moment right now for content creators. I've been like beating the drum, telling all my game dev friends, like, listen, this is a moment where if you have something that people resonate with, there's a chance to build a community.
It's going to be shown to them, for sure.
Exactly, because of the way the platform works, that it shows content to people that it thinks will like it. Small accounts get the chance to get visibility, and if you have something good, there's a chance to grow and stuff. And I think it's an interesting moment. Instagram is kind of in the opposite moment, right? Instagram now, it's much harder, right?
It's so static,
Yeah, it's like I think what you're describing, that there are these communities of people where you're like, oh, I find these people and I connect with them and we connect back and forth, right? But it's not that kind of growth mode.
Yeah, you can't reach anybody outside of that community, really.
Right,
yeah.
Right. It's much more kind of one-to-one, hand-to-hand kind of communication. Yeah. No, that's very interesting. I think it's something just for people to pay attention to right now, that it's like... and then I think what's interesting, what we see with you, this is very like kind of content creator inside baseball, but anyway, it's my show, so we can talk about it. But like the fact that you're, I someone who obsessively watches numbers on YouTube. I used to do it in my corporate job, and now I do it on my tiny independent channel. Your first video, you got like 5,000 views in 6 days. Your TikTok people showed up on YouTube,
Yeah.
big
Yeah,
time. Like
definitely.
that's not
Definitely.
always normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was your decision in starting the YouTube? Because I think I saw you say somewhere you were like, my community told me to make a YouTube.
Yeah, really. Like I had no plans to make a YouTube at all. At least like in regards to like gaming stuff, and just people in the comments were like, please make a YouTube. Like, please, I want to see like longer form things. I want to see like just giving recommendations of stuff they would want to see from me. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm starting YouTube. And yeah, and then they did show up, which I think is so interesting. Like there's so many people in the comments that were like, I came from TikTok and thank you for making YouTube. And I like, that blows my mind. Like I can't imagine like how people would care enough to like come see me on another platform. That's
Yeah, I mean,
wild to
because
me.
that is hard to do. Anybody who's in
Yeah.
this business knows that like people get huge on one platform and they're like, okay, I'm moving to whatever, and it's like,
Yeah. And people are like, I don't care.
yeah, no, sorry, what? Sorry, you know, yeah, just miss that one.
Yeah.
But I think what that points to for me is the feeling. Well, first of all, I mean, this is like from a pure business perspective, the fact that this is always the best way to start anything, that people are literally saying, please make a YouTube, right? Like that. You do, there's no more surefire thing than like a bunch of, I mean, obviously we're talking about attention as opposed to people buying a product, right? It's a little bit of a different world. It's free content.
Yeah.
You know, this is the attention economy that we're in. But, you know, the fact that people are saying, hey, please do this and we will come over there is like bananas.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it though. I feel like there is a different purpose for it, like completely. Like I can talk longer about all of the games, and I could give more game recommendations and like do let's plays, which that's the main thing people really wanted to see was like play through like gameplay of actual games.
Yeah, that's interesting too. And the other combination that, have you ever thought about getting on Twitch?
Yeah, that's another thing people ask
for
me to do, but that's a little bit more scary to me.
Is it really? Yeah.
It's so scary. I don't know. Just live streaming is like.
It's funny. You would probably be good at it. The Twitch is actually, I used to do Twitch for my job actually. Twitch is more like TikTok. Well, like YouTube now has gone to a place where it's very, it's you got to be pretty high quality. It's not like TikTok, right? Where TikTok is just, I mean, actually, what you do on TikTok is quite polished, but most of TikTok is like just like, you know, chaotic, low.
And people love it.
Yeah, and people love it, and that's actually part of the feeling of the platform, right? But YouTube now, it's like everything YouTube has kind of professionalized, right? That it's
Definitely.
like shaky cam, whatever videos. I'm sure that somebody will blow up with that, but basically now it's like turning into TV, right? But Twitch is not that. Twitch is still like TikTok in that it's this way more unscripted, just hanging out kind of vibe, which might be good for your people, you know. I don't know. I won't put too much pressure on it, but it might be worth a try and it might be fun. So yeah, I find all that super. And then also you have a Discord, right? What was the
I do.
What was the motivation for starting that?
That was also just people asking for it, which is crazy. But someone asked for it. I think I used Discord once in my life for like Animal Crossing things. Like I needed like Animal Crossing turnip like stuff.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I used Discord. I had no idea how to use it. And so I just started it and put it out there. And then I had people coming to me like, hey, I can mod for you if you want, or like be an admin or whatever. I didn't even know the difference. And then I just had these amazing admins who like did everything and like set everything up and all the bots and everything. And now I think there's like over 2,000 people in it, which is, yeah, it's insane. But everybody's like so supportive and nice. And like there's like a channel that plays Animal Crossing together every Sunday or Saturday for like hours. And it's just so cute. I love it.
That's amazing. That's also super cool. And to me is also like a sign that there's a real organic community that, you know, that's just kind of coming together around this vibe that you're putting out there. I can hear your cat. Your cat either wants to come in or go out.
He's dramatic. He's perfectly fine. He just like wants attention.
He wants attention. This is not podcast time. This is cat time. That's good.
Stop saying.
No, it's fine. This is real life happening live on the podcast. Yeah, no, I think that that's also to me is crazy. It's also interesting. Like, I don't know what the viewers like. One of the things that is a kind of advice now for game developers is say you're making your game pretty early on in the process. You should make a Discord. Right. And try to get people to join and stay there and talk because this building the community around the game is like a very positive kind of grassroots marketing approach. You know, but it's hard, you know, it's hard to get people to join. So it's super interesting to see what's happening with your community, that it's just this kind of organic people coming together. So maybe this is a good way to pivot to talk about like just cozy games broadly, and maybe this and maybe how that relates to this community. I mean, what are cozy games in your world?
Yeah, so I feel like the best way to sum it up is just like a game that's so low stakes that you don't feel like anything you're doing is like really has that many like consequences.
Yeah.
And because of that, you're just able to relax in the world kind of that you're in and just like do what you want to do. Like, and I think it's interesting that there's some exceptions to that. Like Stardew is a cozy game to me, but there is kind of like a daily time limit that's a little bit like stressful.
There's a little pressure.
Yeah, there's a little pressure. So it's interesting that there's games like that are like fully considered a cozy game.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's still like that level of like obligation to it. But yeah, I think it's just like the wholesomeness, the low stakes, just like the world you can kind of escape into. I think that's a good way to sum it up.
I totally agree. And I think that it's interesting what you mentioned about Stardew with that. There is that little bit of pressure, and there is the thing that I was struck by Stardew. Maybe this is just me being like somebody who's like obsessed with like optimizing and like numbers and business, you know, but I was like, oh, this is like a turnip selling game. Like, I mean, it was like, how do I get more money? That was like that was like my first. I was like, okay, I have to figure out how many should I buy turnips, or how do I get the most money as fast as possible? Which was kind of funny. And then there's like the evil Walmart in the game, you know. It was kind of interesting. It wasn't what I had exactly expected from everything I'd heard about it, because I actually only started playing it fairly recently. But it definitely has that warm feeling. And I think something about and I think this is true with Animal Crossing too, right? It's a small world, right? It's a kind of a knowable world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think maybe is part of it, right? There's a feeling of safety in something it's not Skyrim, right? Which is like huge, and who knows where there's a skeleton or
Although
whatever.
I do think those can be cozy too.
So this is
Skyrim, Breath
interesting.
of the Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you mentioned Breath of the Wild in your YouTube video, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I definitely see it. I mean, how do you think about that as like games like Skyrim and Zelda relating to this idea?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing of like it being low stakes in your actions not really having consequences because like like when you're looking at the worlds, they're completely polar opposites, like open world, seemingly endless, and
Yeah.
then little tiny town that you can learn in like 20 minutes. But the underlying like theme is like you can do whatever you want and just whatever makes you happy, whatever you feel like spending your time on that day, that's what you can do. And I feel like that's what Breath of the Wild and Skyrim have too. Like people in my comments are talking about how they just like catch butterflies all day or just collect horses or, like the opportunities are endless and you can just do what you feel like doing. And if that's just like cozy nature things, you can do that. So I think that's why it's cozy.
Totally. Yeah. No, I think that, and I definitely, some of my favorite stuff in like Breath of the Wild is like the cooking and, which it does affect the combat. It is part of the kind of main game, but it's also just kind of really fun in and of itself, and the cute little animation that plays and the
Yeah.
music and everything. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think actually, so maybe there's a thing there about, is it about freedom of choice, or is it about freedom of choice? Is it about freedom from pressure? Like, I think that there's something there that is interesting to me, and and also maybe the fact that one of the things I like about these games is that unlike, I don't know, Dark Souls or something, you never are stuck, right? Or it's really rare that you're stuck. And this is like the thing I hate most in any kind of game is like being stuck. Like I can't solve this is why I hate puzzle games. I don't hate them, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm stuck. I'm dumb and I'm stuck.
Yeah. Big dummy, just throw the switch.
Just like, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't, things like Stardew, Animal Crossing, Zelda, Skyrim, there is always this feeling like, well, if I can't beat the dungeon, I'm going to go collect horses or I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah.
Like, forget it,
Yeah.
I feel like that's an interesting aspect of it. And maybe that's part of the low stakes thing, right? You're not forced into this like linear moment where you're like, well, I'm either going to kill the boss or do
die.
it again,
Yeah.
like, I'm stuck until I do the right thing. It's like, no, I'm actually, forget the boss. I'm going to go collect butterflies,
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's super, super interesting. And the, I mean, so obviously like Stardew, Animal Crossing, what else do you see are like the kind of the big ones for you that kind of fit in this world, or maybe interesting ones that people might not think of?
I think a recent interesting one, which I did not know about until TikTok, was Night in the Woods. And I'm not big on like really story heavy dialogue based games.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I never checked it out. But people, like everybody was like, you have to play Night in the Woods. It's the coziest game. It's like so interesting and cool. And yeah, I think that's one of the unique ones because it does have that self-contained like world aspect where there's this little neighborhood and that's all you're doing the whole time is just going in this little neighborhood and like talking to people and just like kind of learning the background of this character with some like platform elements. But yeah, it's really, really cozy. And it does have that like it is low stakes. You are choosing what you want to do every day, but there is like this slight push of like storyline that you kind of are following, but you don't have to do it in like any order or anything. And just like the animations are so cozy and like autumnal.
Yeah. That's fun. Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, that's an amazing game. And it's interesting. The point that you bring up about story is interesting, right? Like, and actually pretty much everything that we're talking about so far, either if it has a story, the story is kind of in the background, right? It's not
Yeah.
necessarily this very strong linear push forward through the story, which is an interesting part of this. And I wonder how much of that. I'm not a big story person myself. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I mean, I know people love them.
Yeah. I feel like it's the same thing of like the puzzle thing where like
Yeah.
not wanting to like be on a timeline that's not your own.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to
Yeah.
be stuck somewhere and I don't want to be told where to go either, you know.
Right. Right. You get into this thing, they're like, get me the object. And I don't want to get the object.
I want to go over
And
there.
they're like, well, you're stuck. You can't, until you get me the object, you can't do anything else. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that's a good, it's about that feeling of freedom and not necessarily being kind of funneled down a track of, making the right choices or whatever. How much do you think that I know a big, and it was interesting, you mentioned like people sharing how they're playing these games. How much do you think the kind of self-expression, like decorating your house in Animal Crossing or having outfits or building your island in a beautiful way, how much do you think of that as part of it versus being like a kind of a adjacent
You mean like
genre?
in game? Like
Yeah,
kind of
like being
in-game?
able to like, express yourself
Yeah.
in the game.
Yeah, I think there's definitely I think that's definitely an important aspect. I don't think in every game, like I think Stardew and Breath of the Wild, it's a little bit more just like an added cool thing you can
Yeah.
do. But I think it's kind of essential in Animal Crossing. Like that's kind of one of the main things is like you have to really care about your personalization of this. Otherwise, there's not going to be a lot to do, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's a part of why Animal Crossing does appeal to so many people that aren't typically into games is because mainly the whole aspect is like create this little world that you want, create a world you want to see, which I feel like is similar to like Sims and how that appeals to people that aren't typically into like normal gaming games.
Yes, that's actually a very good. Sims is an interesting one. A lot of people don't know how huge Sims is and what a
Yeah.
world of Sims players. And I don't know if I'm going out on a limb here, but women. There's
Yeah.
a lot of women playing The Sims and doing crazy. I don't know how it was like Twitter or somewhere I got down into this community, and this woman was like, I forget, she was like a Sims influencer who was like selling her own makeup, Sims makeup. It was like her brand. And I was like, what? This, first of all, like people are playing The Sims, and then like, I mean, I know it's a big game, right? But this was like years after it came out, and she was like, "Yes, I'm launching my makeup line in The Sims," and she had all these followers, and I was like, "What?" Like,
I think my favorite like little subcategory of Sims CC, because that's what it's like, custom content you can download.
yes,
My favorite is like there's these creators they're like Black creators that create all of these little like objects, like house objects and clothes and things like that are like specific to Black culture, like Black American culture. And it's so interesting to me, like I could write like a thesis on it. I'm like so interested in the fact that like there's this group of people that not only care about The Sims, but care about like replicating their lives in The Sims and their culture in The Sims. I think that's coolest thing ever.
that's super cool. And I think actually, now that you mention it, I remember it was in this same world, but Black hair and Black women's hair, especially in The Sims, right? And I forget, somebody was either selling it or making it, or but it was a whole thing. And it's I mean, this theme of representation, right, is an interesting one. And when you have the desire of people to see themselves and to see their lives and to be visible in these virtual worlds, I think is super interesting and good. I think it's a way for people to kind of express themselves and imagine a world that they want to imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, super interesting. I mean, how do you feel that plays into the like your community stuff? The you being a woman of color and all of that. Is that a theme in your community, or is it not something
Yeah,
that you all really think about?
I think almost both. Like surprisingly, like I didn't enter the gaming community because I was like, oh, there's a bunch of women of color here, and I'm gonna, like find people that I connect with that way. Like I just entered the gaming community, and there happened to be just so many women of color.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think like a lot of us were kind of like the odd ones out growing up and stuff like that, and that's probably why we got into gaming and like why we connect with it so much. And yeah, I'm not really sure why there's so many women of color specifically in like this cozy gaming community, but yeah, it's really interesting, but it's also really nice because there's like that level of understanding and like understanding like why we're here and like what motivates us and stuff like that. And like providing that like acceptance and comfort with each other is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, I think it's you mentioned at the beginning, like this idea of not having a lot of friends who are into games in real life, right? And then finding this community online, I find really interesting. And I feel like this is kind of we're in this mode now with the internet, and especially this year, like, not only are we finding community online, but we're finding more and more specific communities online, right? Like this, it's getting, there's something happening where it's getting kind of more and more, and that's, I don't know, social and YouTube and all this stuff is making it possible. But that these people are finding each other in these increasingly specific, and some of these groups are quite big, right? But around these kind of certain ideas like cozy games,
Yeah.
It's
And then also I realized I forgot to touch back on the point you made about like, does it matter or does it not? There's also an aspect where it doesn't, like, it's almost like identity is not a thing because everybody's so nice and just like, it's all about the games and what you're putting out, and like your identity has nothing to do with it, which in a lot of instances, like I wouldn't, like I like I'm proud of my identity and like I'm always ready to talk about it, but it's not in like an erasure way. It's in like we're all here for one thing, and like we accept anybody that's here. So like none of that matters almost. So it's so fascinating because it's like at the same time, like everybody's like, there's a big group of like women of color, and people respect that and accept you. But then it's also like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, I think that's super interesting, and it's also right. There's something interesting about this is also, as opposed to being a fashion community or a hair community or certain kind of things that are much more about me, the person, and the way I look. There's this escapist. This is a kind of a fantasy world, right? So it's maybe plays out a little bit differently. Super, super interesting. I mean, I think that, for me, as a game developer and a person who's passionate about video games broadly, I love traditional violent, quote unquote masculine video games, all that stuff. But
so do I.
I mean, it's great. There's amazing work being made in that area, right? But I'm always very happy to see things getting wider and more. It's like saying the only kind of movies that we have are action movies about shooting, right? Like that every movie in every movie theater is Die Hard or whatever, and that's it, right? Yeah. And so it's I feel partly because of the indie game movement, right, and partly because of this kind of community, social media communities forming around these things, that we're now seeing people finding each other and supporting these kind of other kinds of things. Whereas previously, I don't think that, like, Harvest Moon and stuff would like come out and people would buy it. It was like, okay, people are buying this. So, but there was no, there was no like, people weren't like talking to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't visible as like a community or a group.
Yeah.
And now that's
Exactly.
changing, which I find very encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I hope that it tells more game developers that there is a market for it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this was part of like why I wanted to talk to you and just hear about your perspective on all of it is that, I think it's also important for the audience who watches this channel just to think, hey, you know what? There are these groups of people out there who are organizing themselves together, who are not just scattered in the wind, right? But who are actually organizing together saying, we want these kind of games and we're supporting these, these are the games that we're supporting and so on. And to find those people and talk to them and offer, offer things to them. And I think it's really cool. And it's an opportunity to broaden the whole world of what we're all doing and connect people and stuff. So well, I think that's a great point to stop. I think I really appreciate your time you're taking the time to come on, and I will put in the description the links for your stuff. I encourage everybody to check it out. It's amazing. And yeah, I mean, so for folks who, where do you tell people to start if they want to kind of come into your world and get to know you and your community?
I guess I think I would say TikTok at this point, because that's where most people are kind of congregating and, talking about what they want to see and talking about the games they like. And so if you're a game developer and you're like, what do people in this space want to see? You will find that all on TikTok. And then Instagram is kind of just more like aesthetic stuff and, the community itself. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Kennedy, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Look forward to talking more in the future.
Yeah.